Hi. So not used to doing this again. Hi. Yeah, I'm sort of back. We'll see. I have a new job, which is kind of the reason why I thought about restarting talking about my career, the job market, etc. I had a couple of wild years behind me and a lot of thoughts on the current state of the job market. So, yeah, let's recap what happened and how I managed and talk about how crazy different it is to get a job or search for a job in data and analytics in 2024 and 25 as opposed to 2020 when I started this channel. I mean, you're not oblivious to the reality, of course. You've probably seen those TikToks where people apply to hundreds and thousands of jobs and just get ghosted all the time. 5 years ago, that was definitely not the case. It was quite the opposite. You had your inbox and LinkedIn flooded by recruiters, companies were reaching out, and now it's mostly crickets. So it's much more challenging, of course, for anyone of any kind of level of seniority and with any role in tech to get a job. I won't get into any breakdowns of why this is happening. There are plenty of great summaries out there. Instead, I just want to share my experience navigating this market mess. And to do that properly, I need to tell a little bit of a backstory. So in January 2023, I took a leave from Spotify to start a business in tech and education with my partner. And 20 days after I started my leave, I got laid off. Honestly, back then I took it as a good thing because my leave was unpaid and the severance gave me some runway money for the whole year of 2023 and a bit of beginning 24. Me and my partner spent quite a bit of time trying to build our product, doing a lot of research, doing marketing, experiments, testing, talking to customers, pivoting, and all of that on repeat. That's a whole separate story for another time. But in early 2024, we realized that we're not currently able to bootstrap and we weren't ready to raise VC funding yet, mostly because the problem that we wanted to solve still needed refining. So we hit pause and both of us went to the job market. One of my biggest worries at the time was, of course, how this career break would affect my job search. And even though it wasn't a break where I didn't do anything, it definitely did affect how people perceived me. So let's get into it. What kind of roles was I looking for and what did I actually find in the 2024-25 job market? To set the stage properly, I will first define what kind of roles I look for and my skill set. When it comes to any data roles, job titles can be very confusing. There's data analyst, product analyst, business analyst, data scientist, ML engineer, AI engineer, all of those. And they're all sound different on paper, but in many companies, the real expectations can be wildly different. For those roles, some positions focus solely on creating dashboards for the leadership and doing KPI reporting, while others want you to build AI models in production from scratch. I was mostly interested in roles that allow me to use my skills to sort of derive business growth and impact, to not just sit behind a screen doing long-term research or production ML engineering. In my job search, I zeroed in on opportunities where I could leverage my main skills, and those are SQL and Python for data analysis, statistics, and quite advanced experimentation and A/B testing to, inform decision making in the company. Obviously, data visualization and reporting, because that's just like the baseline that's needed for these kind of roles. Stakeholder management to bridge the gap between, data and business. A little bit of data engineering area, so building ETLs and pipelines. Doing machine learning, but more from a perspective of statistics and more to solve a research problem rather than build an ML model that will be, working in production. So based on what I do best, the job titles that fit me most were, data scientist, first of all. It's a role that focuses mostly on insights, experimentation, and business impact rather than AI or ML engineering. Then other roles that often outline the same level of, the same set of skills are product analyst and data analyst. So as long as it went beyond just doing reporting for leadership, building dashboards, and as long as it had real ownership over strategy and decision making. And the third set of roles that I was interested in were more tailored towards lead of a team or head of data in a small company. I was open at the time to stepping up into a more leadership role, helping build or scale a data function in the company. So that meant also filtering out roles that weren't a good match for me. Some data scientist roles were purely about AI ML, which wasn't really my focus. Some data analyst roles were mostly creating dashboards in Power BI or using Excel to build charts for the leadership that would be helpful for them. And I didn't really have interest in those kinds of roles as well. Now, setting the stage, you have a better idea of what I will be talking about when mentioning so-called data roles. Now let's move to my interview process. So let's talk about how I actually went through job hunting, because I ended up doing it twice in 1 year. My first job search, which I started in the beginning of 2024, I was kind of trying to focus more on looking for startups and smaller companies. Again, keeping in mind that I wanted maybe to be like a head of data or first data hire for a company. At first, I wanted to try something different, mostly because I wanted to get hands-on experience in shaping data strategy and building tools from scratch. I also thought that I might have or will be able to have more impact working in a small team. That's something that I haven't done before and would be really interesting for me. I wanted to understand the startup environment in case I wanted to build something myself in the future. So that was kind of another extra icing on the cake. It would have been if I would find that kind of company. During the first round of looking for a job, I wasn't super structured about my search, but from what I remember, I'm probably applied to about 20, maybe 30 companies over a span of 2-3 months. I interviewed at 6 companies, I think maybe more. I think I'm at 6 companies for data roles, but there was another one which had a very, very different role, like creating courses in data. So that could have been fun. I got 2 offers out of those 6 companies. Another company told me they'd give me an offer and they ghosted me then, which is, I guess, another thing that happens now. I've accepted a role at a small company, which wasn't really necessarily strictly a startup. They've been quite successful, but still kept their team quite small, where I will be building the data team. So I would be their first data hire. And it seemed quite promising at first, but unfortunately it didn't work out. Reality check for that role was that the company wasn't really receptive to the ideas and plans they hired me for. They wanted a data team, but they didn't really want to change how they work with data. And after 3 months and a very unstructured and weird feedback session with the leadership, I realized that wasn't the right fit. In October 2024, I slowly started looking again, but this time I approached things a little bit differently. For the second round of job hunting, I switched strategies and focused on bigger companies, and specifically IC roles in data science and product analytics. So similar type of roles as before, individual contributor roles in those companies. This time I tracked where I've applied and what kind of response rate I had. So I think from October to November, I applied to 10 roles online. 2 of those were referrals, and they were quite important because those 2 were the biggest companies and most promising ones. I got 5 responses, so 5 replies from companies, both of those referrals included. I interviewed at 4 companies up to the final round. One of them was just a slow one, so it just fell off. I ended up with 3 offers, and one of them was okay. 2 were much better, so I chose one of these. Reflecting back, I mean, it sounds like a nice timeline or a nice process for me, especially comparing to how it typically is in this job market. It's very, very challenging for everyone. But actually, it was so stressful, and mostly because of the timeline problems. So the bigger the company, the longer the process for getting hired there. And some processes have dragged on for months, while other companies were interviewing me for about 2-3 weeks and they were ready to give me an offer quite fast. It may sound kind of nice on paper because I didn't apply to 1,000 companies and only got 3 replies, but it was still way much worse than ever before in terms of the hiring process. I'll tell you in a bit what are the things that I did that I think made it easier for me to go for this job market this time. But first, let's talk about the differences between what's it like to look for a job in data analytics and tech in general, I think, in 2024 and 25 versus 5 years ago in 2020 when things were a bit rosier. First things first is, of course, availability of roles. There are fewer roles in 25 than ever before. In 2020, there were more roles, more variety of levels that you could apply to. Companies were way more open to training and hiring across different experience levels. So hiring a junior or hiring a more senior person to a less senior role. In 25, there's fewer openings, obviously, higher experience requirements, and a cumbersome hiring process. Some companies post the same roles over and over, so you've heard about that, those ghost jobs that are not actually for hiring people, but mostly for, I don't know, collecting resumes or giving people false hope, never leading anywhere. Since I've seen this market for the whole year, I've really noticed some companies in Sweden and Stockholm which open the same role over and over again. And even though I might be super fast applying there and a really good fit and never got a reply. At the same time, companies really want senior level skills for mid-level salaries. So they're hesitant to hire overqualified people. They also don't want to pay you too much, and they also want you to check all the boxes ever, which is a very weird and challenging approach. Second big difference is the interview process itself. So there's more interview rounds, there's more tests, and there's seemingly absolutely zero trust in the candidate. In 2020 and before, there were faster timelines, reasonable-ish take-home tests, and a bit clearer expectations. So if a company saw that they wanted you, they really tried to move quickly through the process. Now, interviewing feels like a full-time job. It's an endurance test. There's more rounds, more hoops to jump through. Companies hire candidates less than ever, and they trust candidates less than ever. And it's not just technical challenges anymore. So you might have a online coding interview, a take-home assignment, but also on your own time, you'll have to do a personality test, an aptitude test, or a logic exam online, which will also take a couple of hours of your time. And some of them are really hard. And there is a whole industry of courses to prepare to those tests, which is quite intense. One company that I've interviewed at put me through a 1-hour test on number comprehension, graph interpretation, and scheduling meetings in busy people's calendars, tasks. Stuff that's very interesting to ask of a person with 8 years of experience working in data and analytics, which feels like they completely distrust applicant experience that you write on CV. Even for a senior role where you have a master's degree and 8 years of experience, you have to prove that you know how to calculate percentages. I don't know if that's reflective of people who apply to the jobs more than maybe the company's distrust, but still, that wasn't the very pleasant part of the process that you have to go through. Now moving to compensation and offers. There's much less pay now offered. There's fewer perks. There's less companies interested in your growth within the role. So before, you could job hop and significantly increase your salary. You could have a better benefits, better stock options, better bonuses, better flexibility. Now salaries are kind of stagnant at 2021, 2022 levels. companies are cutting perks, limiting growth within the company, and definitely removing flexibility, like remote working is not really an option anymore. The biggest changes I saw that there is a lower baseline and lower base level of salaries for senior roles. Very little stock or bonuses. So even startups, they don't really offer giving you any bonuses. Companies don't really emphasize progression anymore. They want to hire you for this specific role and then want you to stay there for as long as possible. So in the end, it kind of feels that companies want not just experienced people, but the perfect person for this role, the perfect candidate, the one that like 100,000% fit, and yet they don't want to pay a premium for that. At the same time, they're really scared of hiring like overqualified people. Now more to the part where I'll summarize what I think helped me to get through the job hunting process this time. After going through the market twice in 1 year, don't recommend. I learned a few things that made the process a bit less painful and more efficient for me personally. That worked for me, that might not work for other people with different experience and different market that they are looking for a job at. But just like a few summaries that work for me is, first of all, a controversial take a little bit, but I only applied for roles that I actually saw myself as a perfect fit. Some advices out there suggest that you need to apply to thousands of roles, everything that's remotely relevant, but I chose to apply to roles where if I were the hiring manager, I'd hire myself. So my skills had to match the job description very well, not just like vaguely fit. And why this worked for me is because, well, I had a really good response rate. I wasted much less time on doing all these applications and answering questionnaires. And I had better quality of interviews for me because I was very confident when I was interviewing for a role. Second tip, which will work for everyone, is that referrals are more important than ever. They were already pretty important before, especially if you wanted to get a really cool company. But now it's so crucial to get a direct contact to a recruiter or connect through a person who works in this company to get noticed. Obviously, that does not mean that you will get hired or that your interview process will be faster. But with thousands of people applying for the same role, if you get a referral, you have a chance to at least get noticed by a recruiter, and at least they will read your resume at least once. Third tip that really helped my mental health mostly is giving absolutely not a second thought on any rejection or ghosting. I stopped asking companies for feedback after they tell me like, oh, we wanted to go with another candidate, because first of all, they are completely not incentivized to give you any useful feedback due to legal concerns. So they will never give you an open feedback on what they didn't like in your interview process. If they do, it's often very random. So it depends more on whether the interviewer had a lunch or had a shitty meeting before interviewing you. You can't really change anything in your behavior based off of this feedback, and you will just feel worse for it. There's absolutely no action that you can do on any interview feedback. So I decided to never waste any energy on ruminating on it, just moving on immediately. Another tip or another point that really worked for me, and I think that might actually work for others too, is I was specifically focusing on the companies and teams within the companies with proven value. So now companies are hiring less for like research or nice to have this amount of data scientists in their company. They're hiring for immediate business impact. And that means that if you find the revenue generating teams, they are more future proof against layoffs, against firing people. You're just going to be more valuable to the company if you're contributing to generating revenue. If the role was in some team that builds internal tools, has a weird uncertain project, that was kind of more of a red flag for me. and I deprioritized those roles when I was looking for a job. The last point, which is a bit of a controversial take as well, is that I decided to not use AI for creating my CV or cover letter at all. I tried it in the beginning and I dropped it. AI generated applications are so easy to spot. And if you spend time editing your application, your CV or cover letter to sound natural, then kind of you're just better off writing it yourself. Also, AI, ChatGPT or any other one that you can use to create your CV or write a cover letter frequently hallucinates. I've seen a lot of those advices on TikTok or YouTube saying that copy this job's description, copy your CV, paste it all in ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT to, adjust your CV so that it fits the role. And when trying to do that, I noticed that I suddenly became a lead of projects that I never did. I worked on products that the company actually never released. I used some skills that I actually don't have in my CV. That's just very dangerous and very weird for you when you get noticed or when you get a reply from a recruiter based off of what ChatGPT hallucinated for you, how you're going to get out of the situation. So I've decided I will write in my tone of voice. I will write concise and the way I see fit. And I think that worked especially for bigger companies, which get more applications because, you can see when someone wrote their CV using AI and when someone did it kind of more in a different tone of voice. So I decided to completely scrap that. Another small tip, which I lived by this year, is applying to roles within 24 hours of posting. It's simple but effective, and the earlier I applied, the better were my chances. So companies often review candidates in batches. A recruiter may open the role on Tuesday afternoon, and then Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning, they look at the amount of people who applied, sort them by time of application, select 3 to 5 candidates to put through the pipeline to send to interviews or to give tech or other tests to. And only if none of those candidates are applicable or none of those candidates are good enough, then they start looking down the pipeline. So if you're not fast enough, that's really kind of just means that it will be a wasted effort applying to this job. Now the finale, which role did I choose in the end? So after a year of job searching, navigating this delayed timelines, endless interviews, and disappointing offers process, I finally had 3 solid options on the table. And at this point, it wasn't just about landing any job. I wanted to choose the right one, especially given my unpleasant experience with a previous endeavor in a startup or a small company. So after everything I've been through in this market, I wanted a role where my skills were valued and my work would have impact and the company actually knew what to do with the data. After weighing all my options, which was a very challenging decision, there were some offers that had very unique benefits, but still I decided to return back to King, where I started my career after my master's, and I really enjoyed working there. There are a few reasons why I came back to King. So first of all, data is very, very important there. Data roles are very important there, especially compared to some other companies that I've been to or what I've heard from other people. A huge problem in many of those companies is that data teams either become like dashboard factories or just become completely irrelevant and unnecessary and unneeded. And at King, that wasn't really the case. Analytics is really deeply integrated into the decision-making process in the company, from developing the product for building features for the games to monetization of those features and analyzing the player behavior. There's a lot of data. It's not just a nice to have thing. It's a really core part of how a company operates. So that kind of gives me a lot of leverage being there in a data role. Second point is that King's culture works for me quite well. I've experienced different companies, environments, different cultures, and I've realized that it makes a plain realization, but it does make a huge difference in how much I enjoy my work. And at King, the structure, the communications, and the way teams collaborate, the way people collaborate just, fits me better. On top of that, I think it's also related to culture. I get to work on a cute and wholesome game on Candy Crush, which reaches, hundreds of millions of people. I have a lot of data, but there's also a creative and fun aspect to it that makes the work even more engaging. And it's rewarding to see how I can help shape a game that so many people enjoy. Third reason is actually that I didn't leave because of any problems. When I left King more than 5 years ago, I did that not because I was unhappy, but more because I was curious about what else is out there. I wanted to experience working in smaller companies, try different challenges, and I did that. Now I'm happy to be back. The fourth reason is, pretty important one, which is compensation. King is one of the best top market level of the market compensations for tech jobs and data jobs in Stockholm. And the fifth reason is an interesting one, is that a lot of people who also left King came back and they seem to be quite happy there again. There were people who spent, 1, 2, 3 years away working in other gaming companies or other companies, and they ended up returning. And that alone says a lot about the work environment and what the company offers long term. So far, I'm pretty happy with my choice. So yeah, that's the story of a couple of last years for me. But I'm curious to know about you. Where have you been? Have you been applying for jobs in data analytics recently? What was your biggest struggle, or how did it go for you? Did you also encounter lack of roles or bad interviews or offers that were really disappointing? I'd love to know. I'd love for us to share our experience and maybe get inspired or supported by each other. So drop a comment below and let's talk about it. I'm certain I'm not the only one who's been dealing with the job market recently, so let's share the experiences. Hopefully, maybe I'm back. I have some things that I would be excited to talk about and share. So if you're interested in learning anything else specifically, please also let me know in the comments. And thank you for watching and have a nice day.